Hello, and welcome to Ideas with Diana on this May 4th, 2019. Today's show is about AI and some comments what were said about AI. Now, the thing about AI which I'm concerned about is the thing. What happens? Jeffrey Hinton mentioned some in past few interviews, and other people, as Elon Musk and others have signed papers about expressing their concerns. But I think a concern that should be mentioned, though, is this, which is why I put some links in the playlist. First, um, let's assume that basically AI continues to go and becomes more powerful than today, with the ability to displace workers and to actually make some companies that actually were planning to hire many thousands of workers put it on pause because that the jobs can be done by an AI. Well, what does that mean? Well, we don't have to look far to consider what that could mean. Just consider the period of COVID around 2020. Let's consider an example of people who worked in the theater in the United States and England. Um, People who worked in the theater in England when COVID shut down the West End Theater District, and no plays could be produced or anything else. People who worked in theater. The British government, as well as the EU, had a UBI program, Universal Basic Income program, that provided people income so that they could still live and continue in the field when COVID passed. Now let's consider what happened in New York. In New York, basically, the United States didn't have a UBI program until very late, which was the stimulus checks. So many people in the theater in New York were told us, oh, well, you could go work in a restaurant, go back, work as a waitress, or do this or do that, or something else like that, though. And the problem is basically in New York, the restaurants were shut down, so you couldn't work as a waitress, waiter, cook, or something else. So how did you survive? Many of them, it's a miracle they did survive. I remember trying to watch some episodes of Saturday Night Live from home, which as an attempt, I'll just say as an attempt. But what happened though, it was very hard. And in Racine, where I was, basically, it was very much a very draconian situation. You couldn't walk outside unless you were doing dutiful activities, unless you wanted to get a $500 ticket. On the bus, you couldn't take the bus unless you're doing dutiful activities, which meant you were going to work, coming from work, shopping, doctor's appointments. So if you tried to go out to Barnes and Noble or something, you had to make up that you needed that for your psychological benefit, and you had to wear a mask. And even a friend of mine who was from Racine returned a few weeks before all the draconian rules ended. He said, "You mean you guys had to wear a mask?" It was about 2 weeks before he returned, and it was about as actually up to the last week of December 2022, we had to wear a mask on the bus and other stuff. And well, how does this get into AI and advancement of AI and AI workers? Okay, well, well, like one company, I had to make a decision whether to decide to postpone hiring workers because of that their jobs can be replaced by AI. And as AI grows, AI will supplement many people, because just take a look at the auto industry. Kenosha, Racine were hubs of the auto industry with AMC and Case and Tentacle. Okay, well, at one point in the auto industry, they started adding robots. And they said, well, that's going to keep everyone's job, and it's going to make everyone's job stay. First, robots were sort of, well, okay, we'll tolerate them. Then what happened was basically, then it came out to, well, our labor costs are too high. We gotta start doing so what happens, they try to add more robots and eventually got to offshoring towards Mexico and China. And finally, about 1989, 1988, excuse me, the last car was made in Kenosha, was produced in Kenosha. And many people in Kenosha still support the auto industry by buying Chrysler because Chrysler was the partner of AMC when they produced cars as well as buying Fiat. Well, the thing is, what does that mean for Kenosha? Well, basically, many unionized jobs, at least 12,000, 50,000 jobs were lost in this area, along with union benefits and also union scale. So many people ended up having to move to fast food, working at McDonald's full time, working at Wendy's. And eventually, what happened was when the push came for $15 an hour, many McDonald's went to this kiosk where Wendy's would go. But the thing is, what they found was surprising when they put in these kiosks. And we've seen in Kenosha, they have these kiosks, but many people don't refuse to use them. Why? Well, for me, basically, I work with the computer most of the time, and I'm on a screen and everything, and sometimes talk to Zoom or talk to podcasting and this. But what I miss is I actually miss talking with the actual person. So when I go on McDonald's, I actually, rather than just treat the person as a robot, I treat the person as a person. I go, hi, I like to place, I like double cheeseburger, junior bacon double cheeseburger, senior drink, and I have the keychain for the frosting. I'll say, well, what type of frosting would you like? Chocolate. And then I sometimes say, well, it looks like you're steady. He says, yeah, we've been steady, which is good, and have a conversation, and it's nice. But what happens though? Let me give you another case of a friend of mine yesterday. He had an issue with his credit card. So I'm not going to name the company, but he called in, and the company had an AI that answered it, and says, well, welcome to calling such and such credit card, and how can I help you? And he said, well, I'd like to talk with the supervisor. Please give your options as billing, customer service, fraud, theft, and finally he said customer service. And then I said, well, then the next thing came up, says, please give your identifying information, last 4 digits of your card. Gave that, he yelled it over the phone because the connection was very bad. And his date of birth, gave that, and then your PIN, and then it says, are you so-and-so calling? And he answered yes to the AI. And finally, the AI connected him to a human. And the human person said, well, he said, well, based on your questions, the AI couldn't make out some of your answers, so we're going to have to do an authentication check through your phone. Okay, so my friend, he's about 17 years older than me, so his cell phone of choice is like this, which is a old-fashioned flip phone like this. So he's calling. So, well, here, we're going to send you a text. So he sends him a text and says, well, we need you to read that number. So now when you look on the flip phone, let me try to see if I can get close enough to you. There's a button that looks like a little globe. You're supposed to be able to push that, and you're supposed to get your messages. So he tried, couldn't get it. He said, well, can I hang up and call you back and give you the code? And the person said, well, I don't know, maybe that might work. So he tried it. He called another person. Person said, well, I can't use the code because that code's assigned to another person. And he said, look, is there any way that you can just email me the code, because I'm near a computer, I can get the code off computer and then off email and talk with you. He says, well, we don't have that either. So the only way we can authenticate is we have to send you a text code, because the AI and our system won't allow us to come back in unless we have that 6-digit code from you. So he says, well, what am I going to have to do? Well, you can't do it through here. You can't do it now. We'll give you another number to call. You're going to have to call main head office, and you're going to have to talk with someone 2 levels up to figure out what we can do, because right now the AI has locked both of us out. Well, one of my friend was extremely frustrated. And he said, "Oh, good God!" He says, "The days I miss of talking with the person and being it." And both of us worked in the computer field. My friend worked in insurance for many years using IBM 370s since he was out of the Navy in around 1969, and I've worked in medical research and also computer research and computer product development with the Air Force and the Navy. Excuse me. And yet I was surprised at this when he told me about it. The thing is, what's interesting though, is as we get more AIs working, there's going to be more frustration because, excuse me, what happens though, what's going to happen when people have out of date machinery, cell phones or something else like this? And also, what's going to happen when we get to the point, like, for example, as I put in this one Star Trek clip with Norman, where basically people become so dependent upon the AIs to do everything, the computers to do everything, that even they don't know how to do it. And this is an issue that's a concern that's mentioned in the current issue of 2600 magazine. Um, the author talks about how he's a teacher and they use a certain company's corporations computers to teach computer science. However, the school won't allow the students to download games or play games on them. Now, when I was first starting to use computers at home, we were encouraged to download games, typing games from Creative Computing magazine written in BASIC, because actually it was found out you learn to play better, and that goes back to a philosophy by Bach. J.S. Bach, when he had his son, he actually made a small book. Let me just get something out just to demonstrate. It's about this size, and he called it Friedrich's Little Buchlein, Bucklein, which is small book in German. And when you look at it, you see basically it starts first with how to play scales, and then basically basic chords. And at one point, it's also includes a minuet in C. La 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 la. La 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 la. And what happened? So that was how Friedrich Bach started learning how to be a composer starting at age 5. And that's how many of us in the 70s started. My parents believed in the same method that Bach used. So I was taught the same way as many of us were typing. But nowadays, when it was mentioned in the 2600 magazine article, kids have to sneak downloading games to play on a computer. And what happens, they learn more by playing games. But the school administration doesn't think so. So what happens, the kids are thinking, well, oh, this game's going to be stored on my computer, I can play it anytime. No, with the special computer at the school systems, it's actually, the disk drive's under the control of the administrator, because the administrator can just go, that program's canceled, that program's canceled. And as far as teaching programming, none. Like for example, when I started in programming, I was a horrible typist. But eventually what happened was I learned to go, now I can go, and now I can even go like this. I could take an article like this, put this down and just go at least 260 words a minute burst rate and an average of 180. But nowadays he laments how, due to this AI type teaching that's taken over, the kids don't even know how to program, and they don't know how. And now I don't like using this term because this is an establishment teacher's term that I really think is a bad way. Well, nowadays they call themselves educators, but when I had good teachers, they were teachers, they didn't call themselves educators. They weren't political. Keyboarding. Many kids don't even know how to keyboard until they get in high school. Um, knew how to quote keyboard by the time we were in the sixth grade, and this was even when computers were not taught in schools. They're taught by our parents at home through a partial homeschooling program and through a partial pod program. But in those days, it wasn't called homeschooling, but it's similar in practice. So, what's my point? Well, my point is we're getting towards the point of a culture where basically people won't even know how to program the computers. So as people don't know how to program the computers, don't know how to type on a computer, don't know how to do anything other than type a letter or maybe do a spreadsheet, but don't know how to write a code or a macro or anything else, or even get to the or even the ability of even losing the ability to write the code to control something like this. This is a ESP8266 with a built-in LED using Thing IO that I purchased through AliExpress, and this is an OLED monitor, same type of TV that's used on your big TV screen, same technology, and a few push buttons, an opto isolator, basic a keyboard interface. Also, bus control chip, memory chips. And what happens now when with the current thing is the problem is it's like the Star Trek thing of Norman and even like the face of evil. When people become so dependent upon an AI, they'll become like where the AI has to make decisions for them, and you'll get into a culture where people will be displaced. They won't be able to work. And what happens in the past when people were displaced, they said, well, there are other jobs to go to. If someone was fired or lost a job, they could get a job with the same type of benefits and everything Monday morning. Because even a friend of mine who's from Racine, he tells me, like, for example, by Horwick Field, there's one abandoned business there, but when the business was going good, it's interesting how much they value the community and how well they're doing. They never had to put an ad in the paper. They just had the personnel guy. He'd stand outside the door and people walking by. If he saw someone walking by during the day when people normally were working, say, "Hey, do you want a job?" And the guy looked at him strangely, and he said, "Well," and they said, "No, really. Union benefits first day. We'll give you your own goggle. We'll give you your let me get a pop here. Oops. Hold on. Just a minute. We'll give you your own goggles, steel-toed shoes, jumpsuit, Blue Cross Blue Shield medical card, and give you 2 weeks advance to start today. Or if you want to start tomorrow morning." And guess what? He had a lot of people that worked for him, and the business was very successful until basically the offshoring began in the 80s with the auto industry in this area. And the thing was, well, some people say, well, I finished last in my class in high school when I graduated. I was like, I said, we don't care. We can train you. What do you mean? The teachers couldn't train me. The union can train you. We know where they went wrong in teaching. We can help you. We can train you. So what happens? They take someone in the last in class, and they could make them into a skilled worker. And even this person who's a skilled worker could go to college, get a degree, and move up in management. And about 20 years later, he was a manager or basically head of the union. And he started right from the bottom and moved right up to the top, social mobility. And even if someone didn't know how to make a circuit board, they would teach them like this. This is a current project I'm making to actually make what I call a wave processor. And instead of basically doing just integration, differentiation, and other, I'm making that you can do 64 versions of wave operations using a combination of chips. And the chips I'm waiting for are these little tags here that are coming. Now, when I visit my alma mater and I talk with friends who are professors about this, we talk about the same thing about worrying about the dumbing down of the population and the overly reliance of AI. So what do you do? As AI becomes more prevalent and the current dumbing down of population occurs, um, well, many companies are going to say, well, we want the AI because we want to save money and cost, and we want to make sure that we don't train people so that they'll jump ship and go to another job as soon as they finish training. Well, okay, well, basically, um, people have to eat. Artificial intelligence, all they require basically is enough electrical power, a good data connection that's not snap, crackle, pop, some software upgrades, and some people just walking around as monitors, checking on the screens to make sure everything's going right and there's not any hacker intrusion. Okay, well, what about the rest of the people? Um, they need clean food, water, air, good safe place to live, good safe schools to learn, and also a good safe neighborhood, so that they can live, and also so that their families can procreate and expand. And so if someone says, well, well, we have we have throwaway people, we can just throw them away. Not give them benefits, not give. I'm sorry, if you're going to go to a system where you use AI more in business, or what I call the AI worker to compete against the human worker, then it's going to come out to that basically we need to establish a universal basic income and a universal basic medical. Maybe the different models they use worldwide, like the National Health Service in England and the Canadians. And I'm not saying that I endorse or don't endorse that, but I'm saying we're going to have to establish both models: universal basic income, universal basic medical, and that also includes psychological mental health as well as physical health. In addition to housing, zero tolerance on homelessness. Again, zero tolerance on homelessness, zero tolerance on homelessness. And almost to the point that basically if someone is going to be displaced by an AI worker, then basically they can't be displaced until basically the living standard is equal, to what it is if they don't have a job. And basically for those who want help, as much help, like the Star Trek model, as much help as you request, no more, no less. So in essence, it isn't like to force people to say, well, since you lost your job to an AI, we're going to push you down to a low-level job where you can get verbally abused and such because beggars can't be choosers. Nope. If we're going to go to an AI workforce, we got to end the philosophy beggars can't be choosers, because the people were made beggars by displacement technology, not by their own cause. And also, we got to end beggars can't be choosers, because that's an old 19th century ideal that should be gone to rest and should be 6 feet under by now. So, universal basic income, universal basic medical, if we're going to go to an AI workforce competing against human workers, AI workers competing against human workers. Now, some will say, well, we can stop this if we stop all AI development. Well, I'm sorry, that doesn't work either, because it's the same argument that's used basically in military research. Someone says, well, we could have more money available to the public if we cut our military budget and such and such. Well, that's a nice rosy colored dream, and I really say a rosy colored dream because um, although your group may want to live in delusional land and think, well, we can all live in peace, but there are many people that aren't our allies that basically don't live in delusional land, and they're going to be developing other weaponry to try to cause wars because they want to advance their own uh, not agenda for their own people, but their own personal agenda, because they're megalomaniacs or delusional or just crazy people. So we have to develop weapons to defend against their weapons, and even if that means biological. Um, but the problem is, if we do biological, we got to make sure we have a proper laboratory, not like what happened with a few years ago, with some speculations that project was done in an improper laboratory and they lost control. And also the same thing about 40 years ago too. Um, So this is where with the AI thing is like, you just can't stop technology, because what happens if you stop technology? Well, a common thing that's shown in one episode of The Outer Limits, where a society became so went off the deep end, when they stopped all technology and went back to living in a society based upon 1890, where the most advanced thing was a typewriter and an electric light bulb. What finally happened when they had to try to restart the technology, the whole place was killed off by a terrorist that had one technological bomb, and also in another case by a virus, because they didn't have the technology to solve it. The solution is not to stop technology. The solution is for responsible use of technology. And responsible use of technology, I'm sad to say, comes from actually a method similar to open source. I was one of the first supporters of open source in the early 90s. In open sources, you have a group of people that are not government officials, that are not corporate entities, that are individuals, hobbyists, and others that work together in a body, like basically through the Arduino group, the Raspberry Pi group, SourceForge group, to basically share ideas. Because a year ago, when I was thinking of doing this with Arduino, I didn't know anything about Arduino, excuse me. And what happened was I bought my first one, and let's see, let me get that all for you. Let's see if I can. Oh no, but what happens? I bought my first one, and I started doing a few experiments. But what helped the most was the Arduino group and the Raspberry Pi group, as well as open source group like SourceForge. They provide materials that are freely available for you to share and learn from. And from this, I was able to apply my traditional knowledge of electrical engineering that I learned in the 80s to do advanced things with this. I'll have another show demonstrating more of my projects, but that's how the technology has moved forward. And I think also that's the reason why a lot of traditional tech companies are having trouble putting up the revenues, because as more people jump over to open source like Arduino, SourceForge, Raspberry Pi, and others, and even learn to shop through AliExpress, because when you look at some of these parts on here, when you try to go on some sites, like for example, this chip here, they'll try to charge you $8.95 for that chip. That chip is not worth $8.95 plus shipping. The most that chip should be charged for is $1.95. But when you go through AliExpress, I can buy that chip for 51 cents a chip, or I can buy a lot size of 10 for $1.19 if I'm willing to wait 2 weeks. I'm on a fixed income. I don't get much in the pension. I'm glad that I have what I have in my insurance, because my insurance covers a lot of my health issues, which allows me to do certain things, but I still have to pace myself. But the thing is, even with the Arduino group and open source and others, we realize that people are the most important. You got to take care of the people first. But you can't take a point that, well, we're going to ban our technology because we want to take care of the people first. That's just as bad as one Apple series I saw where called Extrapolations, where they said, well, someone had developed a method to pull all the excess carbon dioxide out of the air, and they said, okay, well, we're going to set carbon credits. So basically, we're going to control this by the invisible hand of capitalism. Sorry, folks, the invisible hand has been broken for many decades, and still is broken. Doesn't work, because in this series, what it came out to was how many parts per billion of carbon did they want this machine to work, because this machine could really suck up everything and take care of everything. And 1.1 person said, well, we want 280, and another person says, well, we can't make enough profit on 280. What about 480? Now, person said, no, we need 660 to make profit. So basically, it came out like a stock market And the group that won was basically the one that said, well, we want 600. But then what they did to bring it down to 480, they made the other people pay dearly in carbon credits for the extra 120 parts per million reduction. So I showed one couple in the last episode trying to have a New Year's Eve, and for them to have a traditional New Year's Eve dinner with wine and 3 courses, it took 6 months of their carbon credits to have that one dinner for that one night. Now that's absurd. That's absurd. And that's why basically we need to get something more like an open source, because whenever you get people say, well, the visible hand can't, no, it doesn't work. And that's why people are basically supporting open source projects, basically like this software, even buying through AliExpress, and even considering the idea of multipolarism, because the problem is when unipolarism becomes gamed, where people can say, well, you got to pay $6.95 for this chip, or you don't get it. When it's actually only worth 51 cents due to current mass production. That's gaming. Or if a coach says, well, my girl's swim team is not doing well, so they find a winger to go into swim team who suddenly has become trans. Sorry, that's what the East Germans used to do, or the German Democratic Republic used to do, and eventually the athletes were banned from the Olympics because of that. But now it's resurfacing again. This is the reason why I can understand why people are concerned about the woke movement, and even with this AI thing, because it's two peas in a pod. It's a case of not everyone, but basically some people have concerns that there's gaming, and there's also a little bit of slippery fingers that want more money to grease their fingers with palms, or grease their lips with gold, or something like that. Though, you know, again, so with this AI thing, what Jeffrey Hinton said, I agree with some of what he said, and I've been a supporter of Jeffrey Hinton since when I first became aware of him, and also knew of him in the early 90s when I started my AI research. And but the thing is, stopping technology is not the way. Basically, government control is not the way, because basically it's too much it's too much bipolar. I want my way. I want my way. There's no professional collegiality or discussion. So it's going to have to be almost like an open source, like the way we do with Arduino, Raspberry Pi, AliExpress, open source. What happens is we have goals, we have human standards, and we follow them. But what happens, so it's not a case where we go pounding on the table and say, you're gonna do it my way, or else I'm gonna smash you, or I'm gonna cancel you, or I'm gonna have someone trump up charges against you, and when you're in court, I'm gonna take a picture and tell everyone to paste your picture on all these posters, like they did with Donald Trump, like they do with former President Trump when he was in this trial in Manhattan. I always thought if someone took a picture of someone and they're going to use it to put on a poster or something or anything, I thought that they needed to have written permission of that person before they could put it on any poster or any sign. I don't know. Maybe my understanding of the laws is wrong, but I thought that they'd have. So those who make those posters, did they have Donald Trump, former President Trump's signature to put those posters on those nasty signs they made of when Donald Trump was in the courtroom at a bad moment? I just wondered. And this goes back to this AI thing. If we're going to have this gaming cancel culture and out of control wokeness and stuff like that, then we're going to have to go to a different system. We're going to have to universal basic income, universal basic medical, and we're going to have to go to an open source system that's not corporate controlled, that's not government, that's limited government controlled. But also, if there is government control, it has to be that basically the officials are not controlled by lobbyists and are known not to accept any money from lobbyists. And also find the Trump rule that anyone leaving government is not allowed to lobby for the government until 14 years after they left government. Well, let me know what you think. Um, I'm on I'm on Telegram and Twitter at Twitter Diana1A. Also, I'm on Truth Social at Diana1A at Truth Social, and on Telegram, the Leo Diana 1K, and you just search ideas with Diana. All these will be posted shortly, and I'd like to thank you for your support. And also, please don't let them put blinders on you. Don't let them block what you hear, and don't let them muzzle what you can say or write. As a free society, you have the permission to say or write anything, even if it's objectionable, as long as you don't advocate violence. This has been Ideas with Diana on this May 4th, 2023, episode 608.